name is Gabrielle, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Money with Friends. Every Wednesday, we have the privilege and the opportunity to come to you to share really important concept about money, life, and everything else. We say money encompasses everything. But on this show, we are not afraid to also tackle issues and topics that may be a little comfortable or unpopular. But this week's topic is poverty kills, access matters. The reason that I wanted to have this conversation is that, in this country, so many people, they say that about 13.4% of the population is living in poverty. So 13.4% of the people that the community that living in poverty. So it's very important that we understand that things are happening to people, and in order for us to understand what's going on, we have to take the time to study the situations, study them, and actually do something about it. So because I had posted something online. It's a poem that I love so much from my Angelou, and it talks about, I know why the caged bird sings. Many times folks are singing because they're being caged. They are caged and they cannot fly. So that's why it's important that we take a time today to talk about what is poverty, how does it affect not only the people who are being impacted, but the community as a whole, or country as a whole. So without further ado, I would like to encourage you to have your friends partake in this conversation. Let your friends know that we are here, and we're here every Wednesday. Tag, share, make a comment, share the webpage, our page here. We would love for you to be part of this conversation tonight, because we want to hear your thoughts about what is poverty and how has it affected you and affected the people that you know, and what can we do about it. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my friends, my three friends who are on the line right now. I'm multitasking, but yes, I have a few friends here with me tonight, and we're gonna have this fun conversation. It's gonna have to be fun because it's a serious conversation. So first we have Dorothy, and then Lisa, and then Vonell can go ahead and introduce themselves. Dorothy, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Dorothy. I am a hero by day. I work with the disability community, one of the most impoverished demographics in the U.S., actually. And I am a comedian by night.
Yes, a comedian by night. I cannot wait to see you live, Dorothy. Hi, Lisa. Thank you again for being on the show.
Hi, I am a marketing expert that's also continuing to learn. I help small businesses and e-commerce companies maximize their social media presence. I'm really excited to be here tonight and to talk about this important topic.
Correct. And tonight we have Vonell Lamour. Vonell, this is your first time here on the show. I'm sure you're excited, right?
I am excited. I feel outnumbered, but hopefully I can hold my own. So my name is Vonell Lamour. I'm also in the marketing space in terms of branding and, digital media. And then by night, I'm a dad, a Haitian dad, proud Haitian dad, of a 4-year-old girl, Haitian girl, and a 2-year-old Haitian boy.
Yeah.
So, and I'm also a proud Haitian son. Said I'm proud of my mom. So yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in, and definitely a pleasure to sit on this couch, I'll call it, even though we're in 4 different places. But it's a pleasure to sit in the living room and have some dialogue. So I look forward to exchanging.
Yeah. I've known Vonell's mom for many years, and we always have intense conversation about life and issues such as this one, poverty, and how it's impacting our community, not only here, but overseas and other communities as well. And so when she told me, you should have a conversation with my son, he's definitely the type of person who would be interested. I was like, from day one, from our first conversation, right, Vonell? We've been into it. Because, if you are someone who's conscientious, and I believe I'm one of them, if you are someone who cares about the least of these among us, your neighbors, because I always tell people I'm a believer, and I was told that to love God and to love my neighbor, like myself. So as yourself. So how do you not pay attention to the census is saying 13.4%, but I will beg the difference, right? So how do we not pay attention to something as impact something as disturbing, I would say, as poverty. So what is poverty? When we think about like somebody who's poor, what is poverty? Can we go with Dorothy? How would you define this?
Okay, I define poverty as a mindset, right? Like lack thereof of mindset or lack of physical things, lack of money, but also, I mean, the main root of it is a mindset for me.
Yeah, definitely. It's a mindset, but also, but if it's at the same time too, it's a condition, right?
Right.
So I think Wikipedia said that you can always Google, right? It says a state or condition of lacking enough resources, right? Lacking enough resources or money to meet your standard of living or basic needs, right? So how do you feel about that? The idea of lacking or not having enough resources? Do you think that's the right definition for poverty for those people who are still questioning it, Vanel?
I definitely agree with Dorothy that I think she started off with saying that it's a mental state. And, obviously, if you don't have enough money, I think, well, not all of us, but many of us have been in, at least temporary times when you just didn't have enough to cover whatever it is that you needed, whether you were a student at some point or early in your career or in transition. We've all been in places where there's been a little bit of scarcity. But I think, and I'm going to go out and probably say something a little radical, but I think in this day and age, 2023 in America, if you're in America and you're, in a metropolitan city, whether it be the Bostons, Miamis, Chicago's, I think poverty is 98% mental. It's definitely more on where you are in your head, what your environment is like, and what you think the options are. If you have electricity and access to a smartphone and not even a computer, but a computer's just iced on the cake. Being completely poor, like to the point of like not being able to eat and feed yourself, I would say that it's more of a mindset than an economical situation.
Yeah. So you think that there are options for many folks, especially those who live in metropolitan areas. But going back again to the social class spectrum, right? They're saying like 13.4% living in poverty. But at the end of the day, can you, Lisa, still be considered poor if you are working and have a paycheck and have access to, like you said, electricity, the internet, and even food, clothing, and all that stuff? What would make someone so nervous about this statistic?
I would say what would make them nervous about it is that I believe it's more people than that number, like the working class poor. So people who have to maybe work 2 to 3 jobs to be able to keep a roof over their head, put food on the table. Those types of things are if they lose that one job, they might be out of a house. They might not have food to eat that night. But I do believe poverty is both a state of mind and also a condition to you not having access to certain things. So not everyone in the country lives next to a metropolitan city with resources available to them. So the people who may be most affected may be on the outside, rural areas who don't have access to great medical health care as well, or access to certain resources. So I think it's both a state of mind and condition. And the working class is the worst.
Yeah, that lack when it comes to food, shelter, water. I mean, going back again to something that you said, I know families who are working 2, 3 jobs and still cannot afford the metropolitan rental market that we have right now in even the state where we live in Boston. Education. If you're not able to afford education, you desire to go to school and you cannot afford it. That's a state of lack, a state of not having enough resources to take care of the things that you want to take care of. So in America, right? Again, going back to something you said, Vonell, in America, we've been told everybody ought to be able to make it. Everybody ought to be able to make it. This is a land of opportunity. Why are so many people not making it then? Why do we have 13?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of factors, right? I mean, I think, you know, there's mental illness. I mean, I think that's something that obviously gets, I mean, it's starting to be talked about more and more, but just being sane and being, you know, having, you know, as Lisa mentioned, access to healthcare, but then just the knowledge around how important it is to have mental wellness. So when you see like, you know, homeless folks, and every big city has a homeless area where everyone's homeless. They're not homeless because they don't have money. I mean, obviously money becomes a symptom, but oftentimes it's a substance abuse or some sort of mental illness and other things. And so we haven't done a good job really tackling those issues. And as a result, you know, if someone's on substance abuse or sort of mental illness, it turns into, you know, whether it be crime, whether it be like lack of being able to keep a job, and relationships, you know, messing up relationships with their family, with friends. So all of it kind of snowballs into, you know, this label of poverty. But I think there's some underlying issues going on. When I speak of the opportunities in terms of like, it's assuming that, you know, to Lisa's point, that you're not completely rural, you're not completely, you know, segregated from, you know, the hub, and that you do have some level of access to information, to internet, and being able to connect. So I think we live, you know, the thing is that the country, as much as there is that 13%, it's a very generous country, right? We live in a society where like the government, if you just look hard enough and you apply hard enough, there's grants, there's all types of social programs, there's all types of, you know, even private people who just donate and give. It isn't this sort of negative place, and it's all about the mindset, right? If you view the world or the country as this like terrible, like oppressive, the man is against me, this, that, and the third, like you're gonna live that. It's gonna become your truth. But if you sort of figure out, okay, you know what, there is a way. Maybe, you know, it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna take a little bit of sacrifice, but as long as I'm willing to put in the work, I'm not gonna, you know, being rich or being super wealthy isn't guaranteed. But getting out of poverty, I don't think is a impossible thing to do in 2023.
It's interesting though, because one of the things I think another post that I posted, I just mentioned it earlier, that I posted a poem by Maya Angelou, right? And Maya Angelou, everybody could say is very respected, thought, you know, a thinker. She was well known. She passed away, of course, but well-known poet. And she wrote this poem that I had referred to. I know why the cage bird sings. What are your thoughts about? I had shared that with you all. What does it mean when it says that the cage bird, right? Because Maya Angelou said that the cage bird cannot fly because the cage bird is in a cage, right? In addition to being in a cage, she said that the cage bird's wings have been clipped and the cage bird feet have been tied. What does that mean? Because you just mentioned that this is a land that really provides endless opportunities. I don't know if you said endless, but I'm using that opportunity.
I would say endless, yes.
Oh, okay, endless. So what does that mean though? What would push someone like Maya Angelou to write a poem like that? What do you think, Dorothy?
I don't know. I guess like I said, stemming from mindset, right? And even Vanessa, when you were talking, and I know I'll get back to that, but just kind of saying like how it is a mindset, right? Poverty is a mindset, and then being able, because there are many opportunities, even for myself, right? I knew I was poor when I was sitting up there washing plastic plates and cups, like, you know. But now that I've kind of like did the work and stuff, and you know, kind of educated myself to kind of spring myself forward and move forward, right, and bring myself out of that poverty mindset. Even being as a mother who is a single mother, I have this joke where I say, like, systematically it's the white man's fault, but unsystematically I make poor choices, right? Or I used to make poor choices. And so when I talk about that, so to tie it in with the poem, right? The birds, it I feel like metaphorically, right, is she talking about, like, not being able to move due to whether it's the environment or just not believing in yourself or not being able to fly. I don't know. But I just feel like with the bird and being in a cage and stuff, I think, like, metaphorically, she was talking about, like, the mindset, right? If we can look at it, because the poem could be taken in multiple ways. So for me, as I'm reading the poem and I'm taking it in, and I'm just thinking, like, okay, the bird has wings, it's clipped, but even though the wings are clipped, it still can do something, right? I mean, other than
But it's in a
flying.
cage though, Dorothy. If you are in a cage, the poem says a free bird leaps on the back of the wind. The free
Right,
bird gets to leap on the back of the wind and
right,
flows downstream till the current ends. Endless opportunities
right,
for the free
right.
bird, and dips his wings,
Hmm.
swing in the orange sun rays, and dares to claim the sky. Right? The free
Right,
bird dares to claim the sky, but not the cage bird. The cage bird stall down his narrow gate,
yep,
right? Can seldom see through his bars of rage. So if you can seldom see through your bars of rage, how can you do something, right?
right.
What do you think about that, Lisa?
Well, I would, taking it for what it's saying. Not for nothing, there are obstacles put in the way of people who have less access to be able to get access, or they have to jump through more hoops, or to do double the work, or maybe do the same job, not get the same pay, which would lead to generational wealth faster, things like that, which still exists today, in terms of us doing the same job, same education, but I might not get the same pay as someone else. I might even have more of an education than somebody else, and I'm still not getting what I should be getting paid because of a lack of discrepancy. So my dollar, which with inflation is now worth less. That's just a little example there. So there are things kind of systematically in place where, yeah, you can make it, but it may take a lot more hoop, a lot of mental strength, a lot more than that free cage bird who dares to take the wind, or dares to take the wind, or feel like they can dip into the sky and do whatever it is that they want to do, unlike the cage bird, who's not only now mentally trapped but physically trapped as well, and they have to now really work a little bit harder to try to feel free, or to become free, or create some type of freeness.
Or at least be singing about freedom, because if your wings are clipped and your feet are tied, right? You can only sing. You are doing something, you're singing. That's why we're singing tonight. We're saying that there is something wrong with poverty, and a lot of people are not being given access. And when you're not given access, it says the cage bird sings with a fearful thrill of things unknown, but long for still. You can still long for it, you can still dream about it, but guess what? Your feet are still tied and your wings are still clipped. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation tonight about poverty. How does it affect us? And how does it affect our reality? And how does it affect society at large? Because being able to understand how it works is very important. Now, this conversation, Dorothy, I was having a conversation with you offline, and you two, Vanel and Lisa, I had posted something online because we said poverty is a social determinants of health. I had posted something online about why so many people dying so young and so suddenly, right? And someone who's a friend of mine said that, that's why I take care of myself and I feed myself. So we just said poverty is a lack of resources, not having access to resources. So how is poverty affecting our health? And many of the people are dying prematurely has poverty, do you know of anybody? Do you have an example of how poverty has affected somebody and have killed them prematurely?
I wouldn't say kill, but I just know working and like the field that I work in, I do a lot of community work. So I've worked at farms and things like that. And just even to see in the urban communities, right? We have, how many times have you all have went to the grocery stores and like, oh, this tomato's rotten, or a lot of these vegetables are bad, right? And that is because that in the urban community, a lot of these local farms, when they take the good food and they sell it to the the more richer or nicer areas, and then they literally give the urban communities the ones that aren't
leftovers.
good as good looking
Yeah.
food. So just in that, we're already eating food that has bacteria or will probably mold over, unless then we're having to throw it away. I just threw away so many vegetables. I just had some vegetables and I'm like, why is it molded? And then I'm just thinking like, duh, because where I shop at, where I live at is in an urban community. So we're getting the lesser end or the rotten fruits, literally. So I mean, that's just one example that I can think of off top.
Yeah, it says poverty kills more people in the US every year than cancer and heart disease. So my friend, going back again, she's saying, I'm taking care of myself because I want to avoid cancer and I want to avoid heart disease. Lucky for her, she's probably living in the American dream, not the American nightmare, because the cage bird who cannot fly, who cannot have a decent income, cannot afford to buy good food, as you said, because they live in communities that have been systemically oppressed. Yes, Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to add to that because that requires access, right? So you don't see, I'm just gonna be frank, I can drive to a Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, but what does that require? A car, and for me to have gas. This where Whole Foods is, you might not be able to get there on a bus. Again, if you're not a big metropolitan area where you can, or with a great transit system, and also the funds, because everything may be a little bit more expensive. So health is wealth, let food be thy medicine. So if you don't even have access to good food, just food which everybody should have access to, then you're putting more processed food into your body. And everything in terms of health, 80% of your health comes from your gut. So what you put inside your body either feeds your body or causes inflammation or viral infections. So therefore, not having those access to good food and you're eating processed junk over time, that will cause sickness. Then you don't have access to good health care. So then now maybe you have to pay out of pocket if your job doesn't give you good insurance. So that leads to poverty that could lead to death. That's how I see it in terms of that aspect right there as an example.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask Volnea, do you want to add something to this? Because the idea of I love what Dorothy mentioned, like being conditionally the area where she lives at, or the community that many marginalized and many poor working class families are living in, they don't have the access. So that's why even if they wanted to have the good health that my friend on Facebook had mentioned, they won't be able to have access to it, because in order for you don't see these type of restaurants and this type of Whole Food supermarkets until the community is getting ready to get gentrified. Meaning like they're pushing out the poor and the working class and the marginalized and taking over the community. What are your thoughts about that, Bonell?
You said a lot there. So okay, well
I'm trying to bring it all in here.
No, I know. I'm trying to, and the way my brain, I got it one thing at a time here. Yeah, I'm a guy, so we have to. You can't move too fast, or we'll get lost in the sauce. But no, I think I agree with what everyone was saying. I think obviously, food does play food does play a big part, and then just I think culture is a big part of it as well, because obviously the type of things like at our cookouts and at our Thanksgivings, the things that we grew up on, I mean, the fried chicken, the all the rice, like these things literally are like killing us slowly, right? Killing us softly, little by little. The white rice, everything that we love, that we thought was good home cooked meals, are actually the things that are creating the high blood pressure, the diabetes, and all the things that all of our, if it's not us, if it's our aunts, our grandmothers, we all are dealing with. And so when you add that and just plain information, one of my grandmothers passed away from colon cancer. And that's, nowadays people rarely do pass away from that, because that's something that a simple checkup, going to the doctors, and you get a colonoscopy or whatever, and that's something that could get treated and avoided. So culture, information, and as everyone's pointed out, just access to food, and just knowledge, like thinking that, not understanding that certain supermarkets, just because you buy it at a store doesn't make it good, right? Just because it's matter of fact, what we would think is fresh fruit or fresh vegetables, the frozen stuff's actually more healthy, because by the time it gets to the, from off the truck, off the farm, and they spray it with whatever they spray it with and all that to keep it looking green and moving it around and touching it, and like, you're better off in the frozen aisle, because where it goes straight to the frozen. So there's just little pieces of information that we just, we're learning, and we're kind of learning on the job, so to speak, with this generation, because we grew up with, I used to eat crazy bowls of Frosted Flakes, or not even Frosted Flakes, the regular store brand cornflakes with a whole lot of sugar in it. And that was a regular meal for me. McDonald's, I mean, I'm old enough where McDonald's was actually a luxury. When I was growing up, like, you would go, you get the Big Mac, and that was like, wow, but like, those things obviously are not good for you, but you develop these habits, you almost get addicted. To this day, I can't, if I see fries, it's like, me and fries, like, I have to like stay away.
So going back again to the fact that access to food, and you mentioned like the cultural effect, like how we grew up eating, but also how we grew up eating stemmed from the fact that that's what we had available to eat. I mean, like, who would not choose to go to the plenty and select the best of the best? If you had the option to select the best of the best, if you grew up eating all rice and beans, or maybe a little bit of a piece of meat, especially if you're from a certain part of the country or the world, because that's all your parents had too. Yeah, people would say you have food stamps, but many, even the food stamps that card that folks have, they cannot buy any type of foods with them. They're limited. They cannot go 20 stores with them. They're limited.
I think if there was an overwhelming campaign, I mean, these things are kind of new in my lifetime, like no smoking. I remember when you'd go in places and it would smell like smoke. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it just went overseas though, Lamont.
What was that?
The non-smoking here went overseas.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
so what I'm saying
the marketing went overseas.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, basic things that we take for granted now, like smoking, eating certain things that are like nobody would do.
Right.
Not too long ago, you would smoke in a hospital with babies and kids around, and all of that. So I think, we're still trying to sort of shake off some of these habits. And then the other thing, from a cultural standpoint, being bigger, because especially if you come from a whatever background, being a little bigger and more weight on you was actually a positive thing. So you'd get forced to, like, kids would be like, if you don't finish your plate, that would be a bad thing. So now you grow up not knowing how to sort of balance your food and, control your appetite, and knowing when you're full and when you're not full, because you feel guilty by being full. So all these things become these like culture things. But I just wanted to quickly comment too on my take on the Maya Angelou's poem. I'm gonna butcher. I'm gonna call it,
I know why the cage bird sings.
Yeah, I don't know why the bird flies, I'll end up saying. So for me, and I think context is everything, right? I think that the poem, the book came out in the 60s, and if you think about what was happening in the 60s, JFK being assassinated, Martin Luther King being assassinated, Malcolm X being assassinated. This is the stuff, the black and white TV of people being hosed down, and Emmett Till, that was a decade before, and she's referencing her childhood, which is even earlier than that. So we're talking about Jim Crow and that era. And if you're growing up in that situation, then yes, you definitely feel like a caged bird, because you can't go anywhere. Like going to certain places can actually cause, can be a life and death situation.
Mhm.
But I think it's dangerous to apply that same sort of concept to this day and age, because it almost assumes that you have no options, that once you're in the cage, there is no help. There aren't any resources. There isn't an internet. There isn't a group somewhere that you can meet up and try to learn a few things. There isn't an online course that you can try to pick up a skill or two. There isn't a social media that you can try your comedy out and get up and build an audience, or get some marketing and push your graphics through, or have an online show. What would it take to have this show like this, where you can have infinite amount of users, infinite amount of listeners? So the fact that you have a show, which you don't need a radio station, you don't need a TV station, you don't need cameras, you don't need all the fancy stuff. It's difficult to be in a cage in this day and age, unless we're talking to Dorothy's point, a mental one, because physically and practically, it's that thing. I don't know who coined the term, but like, if you can't run, you walk. If you can't walk, you crawl. Was that Harriet Tubman? Okay, I've heard it said in different ways, in many ways.
Yeah.
So it's that principle. And if you mentioned Harriet Tubman, I mean, she was born a slave. She could have freed herself. She came back, picked up more people, went back and forth, back and forth. She could have said, I'm in a cage and I can't, there's nothing I can do. And, but she said, and
well, she was in a cage, but she decided to fight through.
But that's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. If you adopt this idea that you're in a cage and there's no way out, you're never going to step off that plantation. You're never going to leave that environment, whether it be mentally or physically. And that's the dangerous part that I feel about with the poem. It suggests to me, at least the way I interpret it, maybe I'm a little cynical about it, it just makes me feel like it's a hopeless bird, right? That just, its wings are gone, its things are clipped, and it has no hope, no help, no hand, and you might as well just sink. And I think in reality, though, it's rarely that case. It's rarely you have zero options, right? There's always some level of, like, even if you have to beg out in the streets, if you put your hand out long enough in any corner, you're gonna get enough people giving you,
yeah,
change.
But I think at a micro level, when you're talking about interpersonal relationship, of course, if I'm in need and I need help, you all will come and rescue me and help me as much as you can. But when we're talking about a systemic level, where folks are being marginalized and oppressed on a daily basis within the system that we live in, yes, we are in a cage. But go ahead, Dorothy.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you. Because when we talk, so me moving, I'm originally from Texas. I left Houston. I came up here in Boston maybe about 6 years ago almost. And so when I think back of, like, my time in Texas, because everyone's like, oh, well, why did you leave, Texas? And I'm like, unlimited abortions, duh, why not? No, joking. But but in terms of access, right? I feel like Massachusetts, Boston has more access to a lot of resources. I can definitely say that much. Is it still kind of like are we still being marginalized in Boston, in Massachusetts? Yes, but I mean, coming from Texas, and then, like, Vonell, as you say, there's a lot of Black people, there's a lot of, like, crab in the bucket kind of community activities going on. So if you don't know that you are in a cage, everyone is there with you, then how are you supposed to know? They don't have a lot of access to a lot of resources as we would here in Boston. And so, which is why I really appreciate it, which is why I probably have stayed, because everybody's like, why are you here? So I definitely agree. But if you don't have that representation, if you don't have access, if you don't have anyone in leadership, kind of like if you don't have those options, or if you don't have a knowing of it and know that these options are out here, you can say, like, go do the go do the research. But if you don't even know that this is available to you, and they don't make it available to you, a lot of stuff, I'm in the community, which is why I'm like, okay, I have access, versus some people's like, well, how did you get, like, how do you have this, or how do you, because I'm not rich. I work in social work. Like, I work for a nonprofit, so I'm getting paid pennies, but I love what I do.
But you can be, so here the thing is, you can be rich in social work, you know? So real quick, and I agree with you. So one thing, real quick, let me just quickly say, so the one thing I will say, I will agree that everyone's experience is different, right? Coming from Houston, or it's coming from Texas, and then coming from Boston and New York, Chicago, and then West Coast, Midwest, everyone has a different case. And that's my other thing about the poem, is that it makes it seem like everyone's in that one cage in the same exact way. And at the top of the cage.
About the cage bird. The cage bird. That could be you, that could be somebody else, but
every bird has a different kind of cage.
The poem is doing compare and contrast, right? We all know that, compare and contrast. Why in the hell is the free bird able to dream and fly high and keep thinking of other breeze, and is able to claim the sky? Why are these birds, those free birds, from what, day one, the beginning of age, right? I would say from 1610, they've been able to fly high, claim the sky, and think of other breeze to fly. Why have they been able to do that in the cage bird generation after generation? Because you're saying like it's a different situation from Jim Crow to slavery to you name it. But every single generation, there's been cage birds. Why are there cage birds and free birds? Do you know, Lisa? Why some are free and some are in cage?
You know, that's a loaded question that I don't know. I can break down in a few minutes, but I can say the cage evolves.
Yeah,
the cage evolves. It's kind of still there, but it evolves, you know. And you mentioning Emmett Till, there's Trayvon Martin, there's all these other people. That's their modern day, you know, that's a modern day Emmett Till, if you will. But I think that the cage just evolves. So it's really, if we take away, yes, as individuals, yes, you can, you know, really move forward. But I think what you're trying to mention, Gabrielle, and correct me if I'm wrong, is more of like the systemic, the society as a whole. How are they disparaging access to different things, resources, and information than others? Some of it seems intentional.
Why is it figuratively and literally speaking, knees are on our necks every single day? And so the cage bird is singing of freedom because they need some freedom. They need some freedom. Poverty is killing us, and we need access. And this is Women's History Month. Studies have shown that women are 35% more likely than men to be poor in America. Women, 35% more likely to be poor in America than men.
Does that also mean Black women?
I was just going to say
it's worse off for Black women, actually. It's
I don't know if I agree with that one. I mean, numbers I can't lie. I don't know the numbers, but
do you know why though? Do you have an idea? Would you have an inclination as to why women are more likely to be poor than men?
I don't know if that's true. Because
wage inequality is one of the wage inequalities. It's a study though that was done.
But numbers, you know, when you do studies and stats, you know, sometimes you got to look at the segment that they're pulling from, and you know the stat, why are they, you know, sometimes there's an agenda around how they place that. And
what about the women that you know? Are they better well off than the men that we know?
Yes, especially the 100%. Black women, I think too. So with me in comedy is very new to me, and but a lot of my like Black male counterparts, and just, I don't know if it's just joke wise or not, but I'm given more opportunity being a Black female.
Women get catered to, and I know that sounds, as the only guy here, don't beat me up, But like, think about if when you have a problem as a woman, right? Whether you're in danger or it's like a mechanic thing, and I'm not trying to be chauvinistic. I got a daughter, all these other things. But usually 9 times out of 10, whether you're calling the police or you're going to the mechanic, you call a man to take care of your problem. You know what I'm saying? Like a man fixes your tire. A man comes and saves you from whatever the danger is. You know, as a guy, you're on your own. You know what I'm saying?
So
they expect you to figure it out.
let me ask you, Lamour, do you believe there's a wage disparity in this country? Like women do make less money than men?
Do I believe it? I mean, if I don't know the numbers, but I mean, I think it depends on the industry. I think it depends on a lot of factors. Are you talking about women who have families who've decided to take time off to raise their kids?
No, women who are working the same jobs as men.
No, but it's never,
who are getting paid, who are discriminated either vertically.
Yeah, I haven't seen that with my own eyes. I think when all things are equal, women actually do better in my world that I've seen.
World, then
yeah, like they excel, they move up the ladder, they're more productive, they're more organized, you know, they can multitask a lot better, so they end up getting rewarded. Think about it. But think about it real quick, because in that theory, right? If women make less and that's what's going on, let's say you're an owner, wouldn't you just hire more women? If you can pay women less, you
would think, but there's a systemic reason why women are being paid.
No, but if that was the case, you would just hire more women to save more money. The bottom line would be the like, you know, the concern.
Well, there are laws against certain vertical.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt. I would agree with you that makes logical sense. I totally agree with you. But I come from the tech space and I can tell you, even if the guy may not be as organized, may not even have to work as hard, he definitely makes the same, if not more, than the woman for the same role, even though she's doing.
Are you comparing white man to black women?
No, I'm just saying in general. So if I had to do it, it's technically the white man makes the dollar, and then I think the black man makes 85 cents to 90 cents on the dollar for the black man, and then it's the white woman, and then it's the black woman for the same role, same level of education, for the same job. So
you go to a job. Yeah, you go to a job, you have multiple degrees. Yeah. That has been my experience. You have multiple degrees and they'll hire someone with a high school diploma to be your boss. I'm just pay him more money than you.
I think there's always going to be your outliers and your exceptions.
No, it's not the outliers.
I don't know if this is the case across the board.
It's systemic. It's institutional racism.
But you got to be careful when you say that, because sometimes it's just not true, right? Like just because it. No. Let me explain. Like, for example, and I mentioned it, Emmett Till. There's so many police brutality stories, but you know how crazy, and I, even though this is public here, it's going to live forever. But do you know that for every police brutality case that you see, like whether it be George Floyd, like each one of those cases, and I'm not exaggerating, there's a comparable case that a white person had. Like there's a white person who died from being choked.
No, we know that. But like, they didn't go through slavery. There are a lot of
but what I'm saying is wait, real quick. So here's the thing is, there's a like movement, and like there's currency.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's currency. There's like a movement to be made. There's money to be made to like push the victim agenda, like to push the like the oppression, the slavery story. Like there's like the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons. They make millions just spewing the fact that we're all oppressed and victims. And from our lens, the way it's marketed to us, it seems that way. But oftentimes, and it doesn't mean that we're not. Don't get me wrong. I've been pulled over and followed in stores all the time. I mean, every Black person has that same exact story. But when you make it seem like that is the narrative and that is the only
It is the
identity that we
narrative,
have,
though. It is the narrative.
it's
It is
part of the narrative. It's not the whole narrative.
Yeah, it's the reality that many
No,
have to
it's not the one we have to accept.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the distinction we have to make is that when we are part of maybe perhaps a segment of the population where we've been privileged, you know, our narratives, our stories are definitely different than your average person who has not been as privileged, right? So perhaps because of the access that you've been granted, Lamont, because I know your mom is an educator.
Yeah, well,
the middle class. Let me
no,
finish.
okay.
She's middle class and she's done so much.
Yeah, she's worked hard. I'm definitely privileged and blessed. I agree.
And perhaps you're not familiar with the struggles.
No,
of
I am. So let me give you an example, right? Like Dorothy, coming from Houston, I grew up like Jay Prince to me was a hero or is a hero, right? And I don't know what he's like from someone who like, you know, from the Texas, but to me, he represented Black excellence, right? He represented entrepreneurship, you know, starting his own label and making something out of nothing. And that's Houston. So to me, that's my perception of what, you know, Rap-A-Lot, Scarface, like that's what that represents to me. So when I hear you say that there wasn't access, people didn't know, everyone was in this cage, it seems like there's like a tale of two stories going on. And the thing is, the biggest thing in that we have to always remember, two things can be true at the same time.
Correct.
Right?
So remember that. Yeah.
While someone can be oppressed, they also can be privileged and vice versa.
Of course.
So while there can be sort of a lack of opportunity and, you know, there can also be a lot of opportunity. And it's just a matter of how you see it and what you're targeting.
Yeah. I love the idea of it's all in the mind because over and over again, we know it's not in your mind. It's not in your mind. It's the reality of so many people who are living their reality of oppression, right? Every single
So can you
day.
give me an example of concrete oppression right now?
Housing, for example, right now in Boston, I don't know if you know what's going on.
Boston, who's being oppressed via housing?
The working class. They cannot afford.
When you say oppressed, what does that mean?
They're not able to afford. This is a lack of resources, not having enough money. Even though they're working multiple hours or multiple jobs, they're not able to afford the rent that's being pushed down their throat, basically. So we have families right now who cannot. If you go to any major university in the United States or in Boston, you'll see who's below oppressed. How many of us do you see at the higher learning institutions? Right?
The president of Harvard, the president, I forget her name. I think
exception to the rules. But what I'm saying, like,
no, but you see what I'm saying? The narrative part. So
Oprah is the billionaire, but do we have billionaires?
No, but
so listen, we have to understand that
it's starting to become a thing, right? I think that after we have been oppressed for so long, I feel like the pandemic really put people in a state where it's like, all right, to sit down and really think about what's happening right now, and what direction do we want to move ourselves forward, and whether it's as individuals, whether it's as collectives. So I get Vanessa, what you're saying in terms of like doing the work, right? But also Gabrielle, you said there is this systematic oppression, right? But if you don't have access to education, if you don't have access to these things, you are going to continue to be in this poverty or this poverty mindset. So I get from both things because I have myself had to I came from Texas. I had it rough. My mother died, my father died. They were both in poverty. They didn't leave us with anything, which showed that they weren't in poverty. I have nothing. So I'm starting from scratch, you know, as an individual to build these things. And like Gabrielle was saying, like, you wouldn't know, right? Because your mother has worked so hard to be able to provide.
No, my grandmother was on welfare. You know what I'm saying? So my mother was on welfare as a kid. So I get that there's a cycle. Like I
Right.
get that this happens.
Generational wealth was not that.
No, but all I'm saying, my only kind of like thesis or whatever you want to call it is that just because you start there doesn't mean you have to end there. That's all I'm saying. So
if they would just open the cage, guess what? People like me, we smart enough to know how to fly. We are eagles. We can fly. We were born to fly. But if you are an eagle and you are being put enough gauge, guess what? It doesn't matter how hard.
But I think the bigger issue is that sometimes as eagles, some eagles hang around with pigeons. And I think that's the bigger problem.
No.
And so instead of flying and being up, they're on the floor like doing peanuts when their
wings are clipped and their feet are tied.
Right, but it's a cycle. People put these things. People put these peanuts. They throw these birds. Right? How many times you've seen people feeding the pigeons and the birds? Right? Because these are things that they like. Right? But it's systematically is what we're trying to say. And I agree. We don't have to stay there. But still, me as someone who's a working single mother. Right? I've made decisions. I'm elevating. I'm moving forward. But then there's always something. Right? That's continuing, whether it's education, me improve my education, whether it's like food insecurities, whether it's rent, like, there's so many things that contribute to it, but you wouldn't understand it or know it unless you have actually gone through that, right?
So and I'm sorry, and maybe I don't mean to be insensitive. I'm not
Take
saying
you to a few places, Lamar.
No. I'm not saying oppression. No. Yeah, I'm not. Like, I think it's obvious that oppression exists. I just try to like put it in perspective of how much of it is external versus internal. And I'm kind of all I'm saying, don't beat me up, is that I'm arguing that I think it's more internal than external. So that's why I ask, if when you say examples of oppression, you're saying, okay, rent, prices, all right. So does that mean that we got to live a little further out? You know what I mean? Does that mean other things? Because I mean, we can't live in Dubai, right? Most of us aren't living in Dubai, so we don't move there. New York City, there's some places that are just expensive, and Boston happens to be one of them.
Why are they expensive though? We need to start asking the question.
No,
and also start asking the question as to who has right to the city.
Yeah. If you want to live in Springfield right now, or Fall River, or there's
there are no jobs here. So you can't even further.
You can't have it all.
But the thing is, but if you move further out of the city, right? Because all the cities has everything that's local commute. Like for me, I'm like, I live in a city where I don't need a car. Then I would have to move out of the city where I'm going to need a car. That's more money that I'll have to come out of pocket for that I probably don't have. And if I do, then I have to worry about the maintenance of the car. Why is it so expensive to live inside the city?
Yeah. Well, listen. So, Dorothy, you're, I guess, living proof that you had to get out the nest in order to figure that out. And you had to take risk. You had to, there's some sacrifice there. Gabriel, I'm pointing and then I'm saying, you got on an airplane and left of a hot tropical,
No, I didn't leave. I was displaced. Let's use the proper language. I was displaced out of my country. Just so many people are being displaced out of the city that they love so much, that they grew up in, and they were raised in, and they worked hard to make better.
But what I mean is not everybody, some people stayed, right? Not everyone left. So there are some people
stayed because they couldn't leave.
Yeah.
You say like move out of another state. How can you move to another state if you have medical condition?
No, okay, but listen. Life isn't fair for everybody.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like everyone has their levels.
Fair for the free bird. The free bird gets to fly and take off another.
No, but you don't know who the pre-bird's mother was, what conditions they had,
got access to
what cage. No, but you don't know what cage they came out of, right?
No, they got access though.
What egg they came out of.
They were able to.
Dorothy, I don't know how old your child is, but their story is going to be a lot different from your story.
For
You know what
sure.
I'm saying? And, so like there's an evolution that happens.
Right.
So,
But when the cage bird was sitting on the back of the bus, the free bird got to sit in front of the bus. When the cage bird was not able to get certain jobs in government contracts, the free bird got certain jobs in
yeah,
government contracts.
but what I'm saying is,
When the
yeah,
free bird was able to go to university and not be pushed away or denied access, the free bird and grandfather, grandmother, all of them got access. In addition to when it was time to buy
but
housing
listen, every day right now,
in the
you just
suburbs.
do a search on the
Taking a-
internet. Every day you'll see an elderly person who's 70, 80 years old graduating college. Every day you'll see somebody missing arms, missing legs, and they're running marathons and they're doing certain things. I get it. There's always going to be struggle. There's always going to be some level of like, I didn't have it well. I mean, Dorothy, I condolences that you lost parents. Like, I don't know what I would be if, the fact that you're still standing and you can even do comedy and make light of certain situations. I would be in a hole somewhere just crying to myself, as much of a mama's boy I am. So I definitely, understand struggle. I'm not being like apathetic or like insensitive to like struggle. I just think that if we harp on it too much and we focus on how bad things are and how negative things are, it's going to keep perpetuating that.
No,
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
So when we talk about being oppressed, I'm like, is this a daily thing where you're just like, you wake up and suddenly the oppression air starts to rain on you?
Some
And
people it is.
I feel
Some
like
people it is, my friend.
I feel it. I feel
Some
it.
people it
Okay.
is.
I go up the street where I stay, it's like just in the neighborhoods, the streets are full of trash, right?
Your
Big
environment.
trash. I'm
Okay.
playing with lava with trash and stuff, playing hopscotch with spit. I don't know
Okay.
if I'm going to COVID, gingivitis, and it's just one of those things where I'm just like, if I go into another community, their community is way cleaner. They have trash pickup, they have street cleaning throughout. So it is a lot that goes on,
Yeah, it's
Def-
every
yeah.
day. For some
I feel
people,
like
it's
that
every
is
day.
oppressing us, because then it's just kind of like one of those things where, all right, I got to wake up to this every day. How is that supposed to motivate me to want better at this
I get
the
it. I get it.
community that I live in?
Yeah. And if you had to study in that environment, like how are
Yeah.
you gonna open up a book and do other? I get it.
I
So
mean,
that
so the idea of women being 35% more likely to be poor than men.
I
So
don't
you
think
like
that's
the
true.
divorce. Usually when men and when you have a couple and there's a divorce, who ended up being in the coupling once there's the uncoupling? Who usually ends up
The
being
guy ends up on some couch somewhere and like living in some basement or some other place. You know what I mean?
because the woman got the
Women
house.
always end up comfortable. Like,
Really, you think so?
Yeah.
no, of course. Think
With
about
the
every
children and
situation.
everything?
How often are women like that? The whole thing of like being put out and like with the kid, like women.
Do you when we on the show here, because we've had the show say health matter, all these things that we encouraging folks to invest in. What does that do? Are we assuming that everybody ought to be able to do everything that they need? I appreciate this conversation because we started with a conversation, to me, that's very serious. And this
No, it is. It is. You're
because
right.
this is
For
you're
sure.
talking about lives. It's
No, I
talking
agree.
about lives.
I
This
agree.
is not
I
a
agree.
trivial situation. It's not
Yeah.
trivial. It's
Right.
serious business, like my mother used to say all the time. This is serious business because people's lives are being impacted. So
Yep.
it's very important that we understand how poverty affects us
Right.
and everybody else around us. Okay, and we have to become sensitized to the reality of how our neighbors, if we truly are people, this is a country that says one nation under God.
Yeah.
If we are a nation that is under God and we want to love our neighbors, we have to think about how they're being impacted on
Yeah.
a basis.
Yeah.
But how poverty is impacting them and
Yeah.
us. Because you know what? We don't live in a bubble. What happens to my neighbors
It happens to me.
happens to me too. Okay.
Yeah.
So that again, thank you so much, young man, Vanel, for being on the show.
Old man V.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
here on the show
Nice meeting
tonight,
you, Vanel.
we're
Nice
trying
meeting
to
you as
bring in the
well. Yeah,
comedy.
I didn't get
message about it.
I gotta get that info for the Tuesday. Let me know what
Yeah,
that
but
is.
we don't hang
Is-
up. I'm gonna go
I said-
offline. Don't hang up.
Okay.
We're gonna do. Thank you
All
everyone
right.
for
Bye bye
watching.
world.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. We're gonna go off and we're gonna share this live. Maybe we're gonna just to edit it and get rid of some of the extra stuff. And then it's gonna no, well, I mean it's already live, but
We're
nobody
gonna edit
gonna
out
see it.
everything Vonell said.
No. For now, you're good, okay? You're fine with me. We just need to will you in a little bit more. Bye. Have a good night.